I'm going to recap the horror mystery film, The Brass Teapot. The opening scene of the horror film shows a lady accidentally saw an elderly woman in an oil drum discovering a solid gold teapot. It was impossible for someone else to inherit such an unexpected windfall. As soon as she had the opportunity, she followed her and crept inside the elderly woman's home. The elderly woman was shocked to see the golden teapot set on a simple small table. She was able to approach the teapot covertly since the elderly woman turned aside to answer the phone at that precise time. Alice couldn't contain her delight at seeing such a lovely gift, and she snatched up the teapot right away before escaping from the house. When a confused John noticed Alice pressing him to start the car immediately, he grudgingly drove off. Alice discovered the teapot was actually made of brass as she was joyfully examining her gift. Unaware that this teapot would soon completely upend their lives, the two went home disappointed. Early the next morning, Alice unintentionally burned herself using a curling iron while fixing her hair. The teapot next to it seemed to move, oddly enough. She discovered $200 inside when she lifted the lid. A weird notion crossed Alice's head as she hastily took out the banknotes and smelt them in amazement. She decided to burn herself again, and sure enough, there was another pile of cash in the teapot, this time $700. Her hypothesis was accurate. The teapot was an extremely profitable device since the amount of money it generated was closely correlated with the extent of the user's hurt. She kicked the table leg, hopping around in excruciating pain. She noticed that there was, in fact, another pile of money in the teapot. She banged her fist against the cupboard, still not pleased, and more banknotes poured out of the teapot. When John arrived home from work, he suspected Alice had been attacked. He found her laying still in bed with several bruises. Alice, however, remained silent and led him to the living room, where she handed him the teapot and instructed him to touch it. She then gave him a hot slap. Before John could comprehend the situation, Alice revealed the teapot's secret to him by opening it and spilling forth mountains of money. John didn't think she was telling the truth. He thought it was all a setup. Alice gave him a hard knee before he could continue speaking, and more money naturally spilled out of the teapot. They experimented all night long and discovered a clear correlation between the quantity of money and the degree of physical discomfort. According to Alice, they might become the wealthiest individuals on the planet if they persisted. John wasn't on board, though, since he thought that if they ruined themselves in the process, all the money in the world wouldn't matter. But Alice didn't agree with John, and she even slept with the teapot cradled in her chest. However, she discovered a letter from John on the nightstand, and discovered that her priceless teapot was gone when she woke up. John made the decision to give the teapot back to its original owner out of concern for the risks it may pose. However, the elderly lady's house was deserted when he got there. He was desperate to keep the teapot out of Alice's hands since he saw it as a ticking time bomb. In order to sell it, he brought it to an auction house, but the specialist determined that it was a relic from an enigmatic Eastern country that was more than 2,000 years old and had an incalculable worth. But he had no idea that a catastrophe was subtly hovering above him. John and Alice later visited the library to look for hints regarding the teapot. Indeed, they discovered some clues in an old book that stated that although the brass teapot had a unique power, no one who used it ever lived to see the conclusion. Unaware that this action would ultimately spell their demise, Alice hurriedly tore out the paper and shoved it into her purse out of fear that John would find out. They agreed when they got home that neither of them could tell a third party the secret. Then both of them put their hands close to the stove heat, making the teapot vomit forth $100 notes. However, that was insufficient. Alice had a full-body wax at a beauty parlor to expedite their accumulation of cash. To make matters worse, John had his teeth extracted by a dentist without anesthetic in order to cause as much pain as possible. They swiftly accumulated $1.94 million in cash by pursuing bodily agony using every possible tactic. After that, Alice bought a diamond ring she had never dared to dream of, and John purchased his ideal luxury supercar. They even purchased a massive mansion. The couple that struggles to pay their rent now indulged in luxury activities, becoming full-time billionaires. One day, a mystery man with an Eastern look appeared at their door during a spectacular party they were hosting. He turned out to be Dr. Ling, an antiques-focused occultist who had come especially to claim the teapot in the hopes that they would give it to him. But the teapot's great power encouraged the couple to keep it, so they sent Ling away right away. They were unaware that they had just invited trouble. They hurried to the door to peep through the crack after being startled awake by a disturbance that night. They witnessed two robbers taking cash from their home. Alice pulled John away in terror. He snatched up a nearby floor light in a rush to protect himself. However, the robbers said that the teapot was taken from an antique business and was a family relic. They didn't intend to seize it this time, but they had discovered its location through an assessment show. Alice rushed at them and began assaulting, refusing to part with a single cent. However, the robbers were too strong for them, and they were soon rendered unconscious. They eventually realized how serious the issue was when they woke up to discover that all of their money and possessions had been taken. To find out the truth, they hurried to Ling's residence, where Ling gave them a stack of photos. According to him, the brass teapot has a 2,000-year history and has been used by several people, all of whom met horrible ends. It may have devastating effects if it ended up in the wrong hands. It would still be disastrous even if only nice people used it. But Alice's avarice was at an unthinkable height. She was adamant that she would never give the teapot to anyone and that she would use it very carefully. However, they discovered that the teapot's ability to generate money was waning when they tried to use it once more after returning home. They turned to more drastic means to sustain their opulent lifestyle. They proceeded to a pub that was subterranean, ordered 2 shots of absinthe, and immediately drank them. They then rubbed up against a large man from behind in an attempt to provoke him. Remarkably, the man drew John into a tight embrace rather than becoming enraged by the transgression. John smacked the man across the face because he felt violated. The man became upset and started beating John viciously, which made the teapot keep spewing forth money. However, the enigmatic Dr. Ling reappeared while he was taking out the garbage. He cautioned John that the adverse effects of the teapot were beginning to show. The terrible effects would be irreversible if they didn't quit using it right now. Alice, meanwhile, carried the teapot with her everywhere. A young man riding a skateboard fell close by mistake one day. She was shocked to see how aggressively the teapot responded and how much money came out. As soon as she informed John of her new finding, their avarice escalated. They attended a boxing bout in a sports venue. The teapot kept spitting out money as long as they were near enough to the fighting. However, it was insufficient for them. They began going to a parlor to see others receive tattoos, and they even went to a hospital to watch ladies give birth. They made more money in a short period of time than they ever would have in a lifetime. But their hunger persisted, and the evil inside them started to show. When a homeless guy was jaywalking one day, Alice speeds up instead of slowing down the car, with the intention of hitting him. Luckily, John saw her intention and veered just in time to prevent a catastrophe. Alice, however, persisted, accusing the homeless guy of jaywalking and claiming that he would have deserved to be struck. She has gone utterly insane, John thought. Then he demanded that Ling be given the teapot. Alice became furious at once and began verbally abusing John. Alice instantly turned around and exited the car in a fit of rage. At that moment, the teapot poured forth a substantial sum of money once more. They were both in disbelief because money still flowed out even though none of them had been physically harmed. Is it possible that insults that cause emotional distress might also provide financial gain? They began psychologically tormenting John right once, and sure enough, there was a large mound of money in the teapot. All of their suspicions appeared to be true, but what they were about to do would put them in a situation from which they could not turn back. John told Alice that he was thinking about his ex-girlfriend when he was playing poker. Money flew out of the teapot as he talked, but Alice wasn't blameless either. She acknowledged that she had dated another man, their previous landlord, after they were married. Before you knew it, money was flying out of the teapot like snowflakes. John was so furious about this that he drove straight to the landlord's house and began hammering on the door. The landlord and his girlfriend walked out to see what was going on. That was the moment John quickly revealed the landlord's dark secrets. Out of anger, the landlord headbutted and knocked down John. The landlord saw the brass teapot as Alice set down her suitcase to assist John. It was full of money when he took it up. The landlord obviously realized something was up, but Alice hastily snatched the teapot back. While returning home, they saw that their previous tactics of assaulting one another were no longer working. They began by knocking on their neighbor's door early in the morning before focusing on individuals in their immediate vicinity. The pair was at one another's throats the moment they told the husband that his wife was the one who had hurt their dog. They then proceeded to John's previous place of employment, where they presented his boss's wife with some incriminating pictures that had been shot prior to his resignation. They gained a fortune off the wife's breakdown. Upon arriving home and beginning to look through their earnings, Alice found yet another startling revelation. Alice would do whatever it took to get money, and she launched her assault as soon as they got to her sister's house. After witnessing her sister's pathetic face, Alice finally found it impossible to tell the truth. But as soon as they arrived home, John appeared abnormally happy, and she regretted it. It indicated to him that Alice was still somewhat human. However, Alice had a fresh plan and firmly pulled John out into the country to dig a hole since John was being too naive. There were enough of evil individuals in the world, so why not use them to provide value? John became acutely aware that Alice had become a total monster. John had no choice but to turn and walk away. John went to Ling's residence by himself to ask for assistance. He asked Ling right away why, if he knew they had the teapot, he hadn't just taken it. Ling clarified that the owner has to voluntarily give the teapot away in order to lift its curse. However, even Ling was helpless now that Alice had completely given in to the teapot's influence. After being discouraged, John went back home and threatened Alice with the teapot, requesting that she decide between the two of them. Alice said she'd choose John, but her gaze never left the teapot. Disillusioned beyond belief, John grabbed the teapot and sprang out the window. A substantial sum of money exploded from the teapot when his corpse struck the floor. Alice was in a frenzy and hurried to John, utterly disregarding the money that was flying all around her. Fortunately, John recovered consciousness after being shaken. Alice at last made the decision to give Ling the teapot the next day. However, they had no idea that while they were asleep, catastrophe would strike once more. The teapot on the table was gone when John walked downstairs to be sure. He caught a glimpse of the landlord's automobile driving away through the window. The teapot appeared to have been stolen by the landlord. This implied that the teapot's secret was now known to the landlord. They made the decision to get the teapot back and deliver it to Ling in order to avert an even bigger catastrophe. However, they were astounded by what they saw. When they got to the landlord's house, it was a complete disaster and in complete disorder. The landlord and his lover, prepared to exchange their lives for unending fortune, suddenly emerged brandishing their firearms. The landlord obviously knew just how to utilize the teapot. They were preparing to take action when the two robbers unexpectedly broke in. The robbers had first intended to take advantage of Alice and John, but now things had gotten totally out of hand. Immediately, they requested that the landlord give them the teapot. But the landlord and his girlfriend refused to give it up since they were now so obsessed by greed. The robber was so enraged that he shot the landlord dead. As bullets exploded behind them, Alice and John dived behind the sofa and remained motionless. Money kept pouring out of the teapot in the meanwhile. All four had perished by the time they eventually peered out. Giving the teapot to Ling, who had been waiting outside, they hurriedly took the money and the teapot and left the landlord's house. A double-edged sword, greed may propel us ahead or bring us to ruin. Instead of letting greed lead to our demise, we must learn to control it and use it as a driving force for advancement. Ling sailed a boat to the middle of the Pacific Ocean to make sure the brass teapot could never hurt anyone again. There, he threw the teapot into the dark, deep sea, along with all of its unending wickedness. Thank you for watching, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.